Tell me what you think about, we should get a drum roll or something here, but I would love to hear what you think about Tesla.
Okay. So there's a preface to the story.
Go ahead.
I made a reservation for Model 3 in 2015, I think, when they just announced it. For $1,000, 2.5 years later, I get email that you can go buy your car. So I can't show up to the showroom. They don't have a Model 3 for me to test drive, and the car that I thought was going to cost me $35,000 now, two-wheel drive cost me a lot more, etc. So long story short, I got my $1,000 back, and that was it.
Gotcha.
So 3 months ago, I actually bought Model 3. At this point, a few things changed. The pricing got much better. They came out with a four-wheel drive car, and I was able to test drive it.
Okay.
And so no more person buys a car, likes it, and just enjoys driving it. So I enjoyed driving it too. But then I sat down and wrote a 37-page article on it. I'm calling it an article probably after 37 pages.
Yeah.
You can't really call it an article anymore, but it was
a short story on Tesla, isn't it?
Yeah. It's like a mini book. One thing I realized, electric car is the car of the future.
Yeah.
I didn't say Tesla, that's a different conclusion. But electric car is the car of the future for a couple of reasons. Number one, it's a much better vehicle. It's a much faster. It's a much simpler vehicle. The normal car has about, the engine has 5,000 parts, moving parts. It has to be cooled down. There is a lot of oil flowing. There is a lot of gears going out. Yeah. Electric car, the engine does not need oil for the most part. Right. It's a very simple mechanism. Yeah. It has very few moving parts. It doesn't have a radiator. Does not have the complex transmission, all these different things. So it requires a lot less maintenance.
Less resources, right?
Yeah, less resources. In addition to this, it's aside of all these things, if you're a government, when you have a gasoline car, you basically tie yourself to oil.
Yeah.
Electricity, could be produced using different resources. Mm-hmm. Today, roughly about 70% of electricity is still produced using basic oil, natural gas, etc. Yes, coal, etc. But now you have choices. You can use nuclear, you could use solar, you can use wind, you can also use hydro. So you have a lot more options. So, and as a technology, electric cars are just superior than gasoline cars. There's no question about it. Aside from environmental benefits, etc., it's a much better technology. Okay,
I can accept that.
So we can accept that. Okay, so now, as I was analyzing Tesla, I was thinking, well, is this the company that's going to succeed? And as I was researching it, speaking of analogies, I realized an analogy that may be happening, that may be transpiring right now. We may be in 2008 or 2009. An iPhone was introduced in 2007. And we may be having this iPhone moment where the General Motors and Fords, etc., they are the Nokias of the world. They own the industry. They own like Nokia was the king of dumb phones.
The traditional platform,
yes,
right?
Nokia was the king of dumb phones.
Yeah.
General Motors is and the others are the kings of
combustible engine.
Dumb cars. Let's call this just to make it the dumb cars. Where electric car is a very different, even though it looks the same, it's very different inside.
Yeah.
It's the battery, so where in a gasoline car, the engine is the most important part, where these companies have huge, spend hundreds, probably billions of dollars on R&D.
Yeah.
All that knowledge, it becomes irrelevant when you go to electric car, because the most important part in electric car is actually the battery. And so just like Nokia has, even though when iPhone came out, Nokia should have looked at Apple and said, "Thank you so much, Apple. Now we know what the future phone would look like."
Right.
That didn't happen, and here's why: because you shifted from one domain to another. It's a shift in domains. It's not just like we introduced just a little bit better dumb phone. Even though smartphones still made phone calls, that was probably the least important part of the device.
Right. And it birthed a new product line entirely, right?
Yes.
Like we're an entire vertical of new products.
Yes, you go from one ecosystem to another.
Yeah.
To another.
Yeah, I can see that.
And so when you go from one domain to another, your assets become your liabilities. I'll give you an example. Just think about this for a second. So Nokia had thousands of engineers that were very good at hardware, but it had very few engineers that were specialized in software user interface, right? So think about General Motors. They have thousands of engineers that are so good at designing these very complex engines, which are completely irrelevant in this new domain, where suddenly this big concoction is replaced by this little thing that's commodity. And then when we looked at what happened at there was a General Motors strike, right? That's why you have a strike, because basically employees saying, well, electric cars, you don't need these engines. If you're going to start making these electric engines, we're going to make less money and you need fewer people. You can automate it more. Mm-hmm. So those employees are now went from being assets to become a liability. So these companies, all of them are unionized. Mm-hmm. So therefore, it's becoming even more difficult to make very drastic changes you need to make.
Yeah.
So one of the takeaways from doing all this research, I realized that even though we today make we assume that every gasoline car manufacturer will be able to transition to electric cars successfully. I think I would like to challenge that thesis. I'm not sure that's actually, I'm not saying that's not necessarily going to happen,
right.
But I'm saying that's not 100% probability.
Right.
And if you look at going back to dumb phones analogy, so you had Nokia and Motorola and BlackBerry have failed to make this transition, but then Samsung has done a great job, has benefited from that. So you're going to have winners and losers. Tesla's final outcome, to some degree, will depend on how successful these car companies transitioning from gasoline to electric. And I think that's where so when we analyzed Tesla, Real Vision did a great special Tesla versus Tesla Q.
Yep.
When you analyze Tesla, I can see both sides.
Yeah.
And the naysayers in Tesla, they have a lot of very good points. Mm-hmm. In fact, I would argue Tesla is a path-dependent company. It's a company that's losing a tremendous amount of money. So for them its existence basically depends on financial markets, on the kindness of financial markets, right?
Yeah.
If financial markets have the WeWork moment,
right,
and say, you know what?
No more credit.
Right. Then suddenly the stock price collapses, right? And and if you're a Tesla shareholder, you get diluted because they'll be issuing shares at $50, at $30, etc.
Right.
I still don't think Tesla will go bankrupt as that entity, just because it's going to be too valuable for somebody else. It doesn't mean as an equity shareholder you're not going to get spiked out. You won't be down 75%.
Yeah.
But as Tesla is an investment to me, this is how it looks. I can see the 75% decline if financial markets, if financial markets basically stop lending the money before it gets to escape velocity.
Yep.
And if it gets to escape velocity and it actually becomes profitable or starts losing money, I can see that we're making 80 million cars a year today globally. There is absolutely no reason at that point, and again, this depends on how General Motors and Ford and everybody else responds.
How they pivot,
they can't take market share and start making a couple million cars a year. And if that's the case, you start suddenly see, they can make tens of billions of dollars of earnings, and therefore the stock price can go up a lot. Mm-hmm. So I've done all this work, and I kind of somewhat frustrated, walked away saying, well, I don't know.
Yeah.
Okay, and I think this, as an investor, you don't want to look at your sunk cost and then make a decision like I need to buy or short or whatever. Sometimes just, you say, well, I learned a lot.
Yeah.
And I walked away that's, obviously saying I probably don't want to buy any gasoline making car today.
Right.
Car company, and say I'm going to do nothing.
Yeah. No, I like it. That's that's the sort of cross that a trader bears, in deciding where you want to put your risk. And sometimes you have to kick all the tires and do all the research, and you come at the end of it and you don't have passion to do anything, right? In the end, you want to decide if it's your money that's worth risking.
Yeah.
And if you would rather have your money in your pocket or in 10 other trades, that's the way it comes down,
That's right. Yeah.
Well, I enjoyed that analysis because it opened up my eyes to the chance that they could survive even with competition coming into the picture, because that was my big bearish argument. But you explained really nicely how they very well could.
Yeah, and so just one point about Nokia. So
Sure.
What Nokia did, their mistake was they tried to take, instead of starting a brand new company, and giving them a limit of capital, saying, go disrupt us.
Yeah.
Okay, where you have a new CEO who can hire anybody he wants. He has a blank piece of paper and say, create a new smartphone. the Nokia, what they tried to do, they tried to take the dumb phone and stretch their Symbian operating system into it, which was a dumb phone operating system. And if you look at the initial efforts of General Motors, that's what they did, right, with bolts and bolts. That's what they're trying to do. And people who drove, so I haven't driven the new electric cars that were made by Jaguar or General Motors,
right.
But the feedback I read about was that it drives very well because at the core is the electric engine,
Right.
But the software still feels like it's the software that's in the
Still
old
lagging.
cars. Yes,
Really?
yes.
Interesting.
Where Tesla's software is now, as a Tesla owner, I've been lucky. They had a lot of production issues,
Right.
but I've been lucky that I had a phenomenal car. Like
Right.
I haven't had any problems, and unlike others, I had great customer service when the car broke, etc. When I had little issues come up, and I can see how it's a car that was designed based on first principles, where you basically, Warren Buffett would call it like, what would Martians do? Like when you don't have the baggage, when you don't have a baggage from a different industry, we just literally have a blank
right.
piece of paper
Blank
and say,
slate, right.
yes. And if you look at the Tesla for a second, the way the car was designed, so if you have a gasoline car and you want to make it four-wheel drive, you basically have to take the power from the engine and extend it to rear wheels.
The other
right?
axis, right?
Yeah. So by doing it, you actually lose power.
Mm-hmm.
In an electric car, and if you were designing, if you were General Motors and you were designing a car today, you probably would do the same thing with the electric engine. Well, Tesla did not have the baggage, so they said, well, actually, we don't need to do this.
Yeah.
We just, the engine itself is not very expensive. It doesn't weigh as much,
Right.
so we're literally just going to put an engine on each axle. That's how they turn a car into four-wheel drive. Just think about it. That's a very different thinking.
Yeah, it's an unbelievable advantage.
Yeah.
Yeah, that is tremendous.